Good morning, welcome back to Average Guy's Garage. This is part 7 of our transmission replacement in this 2000 Toyota Corolla. It's a beautiful fall morning here. Gonna get to work. What we found out since the last video was the replacement transmission that was purchased, when the yard separated it from the engine, the placement pins stayed with the transmission. When I took the one off that was with the car originally that won't go into reverse, the pins stayed with the engine block. So I noticed that when I was reviewing the other video from part 6, that these two pins are duplicated, and I noticed that the second placement pin is also in the replacement distributor. So I'm going to pull this pin out, go underneath, pull the other pin out, and then we should be able to line these up better, get some bolts started, cinch this up together. Okay, there's the number one out, and then that will just fit right into that little slot registration, and then we'll see if we can get these to match up together. Okay, so now I've got the second one out here. I had to lower the transmission down lower than it was, but now it should hook back up. We'll get it back into place and see if we can get this finally connected back up. Alright, so now what we had to do was hook the hoist back up on the transmission to get it free floating, kind of, so we could position it. We had a tough time getting the torque converter alignment into the flywheel. So we went over here and took the bolt out once again from the mount to give us more room, and then I was laying on the ground while it was jacked up, pushing with my foot to get it past those flywheel bolts, and now it's right in the center. So now the pin is lined up correctly here. We get a bolt in, we should be able to get it together a little bit. Alright, now we've got these two upper bolts started, and the pin is in place here. I've removed, oh, and the other mount is in place. So the transmission is supported well, and I've removed the strap. I'm going to go underneath and see if I can get a couple of the bolts to go down below started. Alright, I've been working the 6 bolts on the transmission, and you can see now it's closed the gap pretty well. I put these 2 in here, and then I went below and started the other 4, and I had a jack holding the engine and transmission together until I got the 4 bolts below started. Then I just supported the transmission, because it looked like the engine had to come down just a tad to settle. So I'm going to go down below, show you the other 4 bolts, and then I'm going to put the torque converter bolts back in. So these are the 2 medium length bolts, and then there's one here on each side of the access to the flywheel, and these are started. But before I go any more, I want to make sure I can get the flywheel bolt started. This is a 12 millimeter on the flywheel, and these 4 below and the 2 up there are 14 millimeter, 17 millimeter with a 2 on the top. And I'm simply using a screwdriver here to advance the flywheel to the next location of the bolt on the torque converter. I've already done 3 of them. 3 more to go. And then I'm going to go back and tighten them all up again. Don't go crazy with the screwdriver when you're doing this, just get it to turn. Sometimes you'll get a compression stroke and it'll be tougher to turn, but just take it easy. Alright, the transmission is now back in place. All 6 bolts are in. The torque converter bolts are in and tightened down. So the only thing holding the engine in at this point right now is this engine mount and that engine mount. I've got to go back underneath, put the rear suspension with the engine mount back in, and then put the front engine mount in, and then everything will be back mounted properly so we can start putting things back together. Okay, we've got the old transmission up here back by the car again because we've got to take a few things off. We're going to take these cooler hoses off and reuse those. And I want to take this bracket off here to reuse for the rear motor mount. And then we want to finally take out this short transaxle to reuse. Alright, we're putting in now the suspension cross member and this front to back cross member. I've put in the support that goes to the transmission, and I put in the bolt for the mount. And now, if you can see, I'm just trying to get these bolts to go into the proper holes. This cross mount here has one bolt that has to go in right here, and then the other side of it has to go under the closest bolt to the cross member. That's an integral part of the suspension. And then 2 bolts hold it right here. So that's where we're at now. Just trying to get those bolts knocked in so we can tighten that up. Once that happens, we can put these bolts back into the suspension. There's 5 on each side, 6 on one, 5 on that side. It was actually missing one over there. Okay, so we've got the cross member on right there, bolted down tight. And now we've jacked up the suspension cross member here, and we're putting these bolts back in. There's a little short one there, the longest one goes right there, and then this one right here was missing on this side, but there is another one there and another one there. So I've got 2 bolts to go in there, and then this one here goes in, and then I think that has a suspension cross member sway bar that goes with that or something, additional support. Alright, all 4 of the motor mounts and transmission mounts are back in place. This is the front one right here. Cross member is in place, and I'm still wrapping up the suspension I've got this bar to put in place. It goes on this, it goes across to the other side for extra support. So most of the driver side suspension bolts are back in place. I'm moving over to the passenger side now. Once I get those in place and the suspension is tightened up, then I'm going to go back in with a long extension and tighten that rear motor mount, same way I loosened it earlier. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for today. This is part 7. I got the hoses I needed off of the old transmission, and I replaced the transmission dipstick tube. The other one was damaged. When I lifted it in, it hit on this and got caught behind it and tore this up and bent the tube. So now that's new. And there's still a little bit to do with the suspension. There's one bolt that won't go in, so we'll have to tackle that tomorrow. So thanks for watching, and we'll get back on it tomorrow morning with another video.